Are you feeling the shift in consciousness? Have you heard about the great awakening in consciousness that's going on around the planet right now? My name is James and welcome to the Serenity Journey. Today we're going to talk about the shift in consciousness that's going on around the planet and how you can participate in it and find a way to flow with it rather than going through a great deal of struggle and conflict. So thank you for joining us today. If you are new here, we talk about your pathway to inner peace and overcoming internal conflict so that you can live a life of inner peace. And we are here today talking about the shift in consciousness going on around the planet. You may have heard about it. It's something that's been a work in progress for many, many years, most of our lifetime. But it's ramped up, and this last couple of years has really created a massive shift in the consciousness of the planet. We've gone through this major change in just the last few months that are causing consciousness to change and shift. Hello, Shelley Marie. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you're having a fantastic day. And so we've been working a lot on a shift in consciousness that's been going on really for most of my lifetime. And the shift in consciousness, I started studying and hearing about it back in the early 90s when I started studying spirituality, and we knew this shift was coming. We just didn't know when it was going to happen. It's something that's going to, I think, personally, from my own meditations on it, is something that's going to take years. This is not something that's going to be completed within our lifetime. This is something a lot of people have to understand. I think a lot of the turmoil people are saying is they're trying to use force to make the shift of consciousness happen on their timeline and not surrendering to the shift that's actually naturally happening and just surrendering and allowing it to happen naturally. We're trying to use force to make it happen. People want to use the government to make it happen. And I think a lot of this consciousness shift is going to shift some of that out of our perception. Part of it's about shifting from different levels of consciousness is going to shift our perception. So I've been working on this for a long time. I actually did a video about this about 10 years ago and got a lot of negative feedback off of it. But I've changed kind of some of it up a little bit. But let me see if I can find. Here we go. This is, before we can dive into how to shift our consciousness, we have to look at understanding consciousness. So as we go through consciousness, we have a ladder of consciousness where we go up in awareness. And we kind of, all the entry level is unawareness. And there's a lot of people that are still kind of at this unawareness level. And this unawareness level is related to the root chakra. And the mindset or the driving force is just basic survival. And then you get up into group awareness, where we have groups of our tribal groups. This is where you have people that their identity. And part of this is recognizing that these awarenesses are about our personal identity and understanding our identity. That's what this consciousness is all about. It's about understanding who we are and where we derive our identity from. So as we go up into the group awareness, then we get into awareness where our identity comes from the groups we associate with, our family groups, our religious groups, our political groups, all the different groups, racial groups, all the different ways where we see ourselves and derive our identity from our relationships to these groups. And a lot of this group awareness, our number one driving force in our lives when we're at that level of consciousness, is our security. And you see this a lot. There's a lot of people that are just living their life trying to make ends meet, just trying to be secure, trying to be safe. Their safety and security is like their number one priority in everything that they want to do. And they want everybody else to focus on the same things they do. And then we develop into self-awareness. And this is where we start getting our individual awareness of who we are. And I went through this shift of awareness where I broke free of group consciousness. I broke free away from the need to be identified. It's not that I grew away from needing my family or loving my family or caring about my family, but I got away from my sense of identity coming from my family, my sense of identity coming from my religious groups. But we also kind of get into the mindset of personal achievement. Anybody that's been involved in personal development over the last 30 years. And as a whole, as a culture, as a cultural awareness, this is where we're at right now. This is where we've been. Self-awareness and personal achievement. That's why personal growth, personal development has been so huge in the last 30 or 40 years, because we've been at this consciousness of achievement. And we've been at this consciousness of self-awareness and my own personal achievement. What legacy am I leaving for my family? And this has kind of been the focus of culturally where we've been. Now, not everyone's at that level. There's a lot of people at lower levels. But this is kind of in general where the consciousness of the planet is. But we're moving up into the next level, which is unity awareness. And this is where we're going to start recognizing unity, not just in small groups, but collectively. We start recognizing our collective unity with everyone. And this is where we start moving out of ego consciousness, because the three lower levels are all consciousness of the ego, the false self of this physical reality. And as we move into the unity awareness, we start breaking free of that false awareness. And this is a painful transition. This is where we call, in spiritual circles, we call this going through the dark night of the soul, where you are breaking free of this ego-based awareness and starting to see the world from this totally different lens of spiritual awareness. And we're breaking into really connecting with our true self. And as we connect with our true selves, we recognize that we are united. We are connected to everyone and everything on this planet. And our focus shifts from our personal achievement to a focus, a driving force of service to other people, service to the planet, service to everyone. And we go through up there, and this is kind of the shift in consciousness that the planet's going through right now. Now, individually, some people are still reaching higher levels, and as you heal your heart chakra and go through the awareness of the heart chakra, you also start developing awareness of the others. But to truly ascend takes long time to these higher levels. The next one is universal awareness, and the entities and the beings at universal awareness are able to connect. This is where channelers reach. When channelers are in their zone and they're working with their energy and they're working through the throat chakra, then they are able to channel other entities and allowing other entities to talk through them. And the universal awareness is awareness of peace. And when we try to find, when I talk to people about trying to make this pathway to peace, really it's about creating our awareness and elevating our own consciousness to where we can feel more peace and radiate more peace to others. Again, as we start getting into unity awareness, we start recognizing ourselves as individuals, and we start developing more universal awareness, and the universal awareness that I am the universe. I am everything, not just this planet, not just other people, but every planet, every entity in this universe, we are all connected to and at one with. And then we get into ethereal awareness, which is even higher level of consciousness of understanding the spirit world. And this is where we get into the third eye chakra, and we're able to become one with spiritual beings. And this is where our guardian angels are, our spirit guides, those that work with us. They are at this level of consciousness, and they are here to share their message with all, because they recognize that they are all, and they are here to share with all. That's why those of us that connect with spirit guides are able to get into the third eye, and we're able to work with them because they are trying to share their message with us. And then as they ascend, as they go higher, then they get into oneness awareness. And their priority then is ascension, not just their personal ascension, again, because by that time, by that level of consciousness, you've completely shed any kind of personal identity. And it's just about ascending and becoming one with source, becoming one and creating ascension, not just for themselves, but for all of creation, ascending to being at one with source. That is their priority and motivation. So that's kind of where understanding these levels of consciousness, and that's just a very, very quick run through. For me to go through the entire thing would be about a 12-hour long course, and I don't have the time to do that today. But this is just kind of scratching the surface of understanding the levels of consciousness. Now, to understand where we're at, again, we are at unity awareness, or we are at self-awareness and moving into unity awareness. So we're moving from the level of achievement, hitting the wrong one, to service to others, and shifting our focus less on what we receive and more on what can we do to give. And I've seen this in business, in content creation space, in the internet, with everything going on. I've seen more and more of a shift of our consciousness away from what do we get, what's in it for me, to how may I serve. That's part of making this shift in consciousness, is I'm understanding our emotional states and understanding that we are moving into a consciousness and a drive to serve rather than receive. And we get more of our higher emotional states from serving than we do from receiving. So we stop working on what am I manifesting for myself, and our focus shifts to what am I manifesting to serve others? What can I do to manifest peace on the planet? What can I do to manifest healing on the planet? What can I do to manifest more for the planet as a whole? We also stop focusing so much on individual concerns, not only for ourselves, but other people as well, which causes a lot of conflict with other people. But it's more, our focus is more on the macro cause. We are more, what can we do to serve the greatest good for everyone? Not just one person, not just me, not just you. What can I do to serve everyone? And we are, those of us that are making this shift are recognizing we need to help the rest of humanity make this shift as well. That's why there's so many light workers. That's why there's so many high consciousness people coming into this planet. And there are people, children being born right now, that have already made the ascension. They are coming in without going through the levels of consciousness that the rest of us had to fight throughout our lives. There are children being born right now at 4th level consciousness and at heart consciousness. And so they are coming in this world. They are guardian angels literally being born onto this earth to help shift this consciousness. And some of the stuff that I've read and researched, as well as been meditating on myself, this consciousness shift will take approximately 400 years to complete. It is not going to happen overnight, but we are slowly making steps to it. And we're in the beginning stages of anything new. It's like a birthing of a whole new world. And it's painful. And there's a lot of suffering going on in the world right now. It's not suffering because the world is going to an end. It's because the paradigm is coming to a end. And the paradigm of ego consciousness is starting to die. That's what we're experiencing. But because so many people have their whole sense of identity wrapped up in their achievements, wrapped up in their survival, their entire sense of identity comes from their group consciousness, ego. As that ego consciousness dies, they feel like the whole world is coming to an end, because the world as they know it is coming to an end. And it's going to be a lot of resistance. We have to, as we go through and we heal ourselves, this is where we have to focus on ourselves individually in order to heal others. We have to work on our own personal healing. And the more we work on our own personal healing, the more impact we have on the collective, because my healing energy goes into the collective and it helps the collective. It helps everyone. If I heal myself, I help heal everyone on the planet at the same time. At the same time, if I don't work on my own healing, I'm harming everyone else in the collective. If I'm being in a negative state myself, then that negative energy is going out and affecting everyone in the collective. Whether they recognize it or not, doesn't matter. This collective energy is what's causing a lot of stress. So how do we know where we're at? One thing we have to realize, there's a couple of things. One, we have to understand our emotional guidance system. Our emotions are our internal guidance system that help us know where we're at in relationship to our spirit. The way I look at this is our emotions are really kind of our soul and our ego consciousness communicating with each other. And when they're in alignment with each other, we feel these positive emotional flows. When they are in conflict with each other, we feel these negative emotional flows and these negative emotional states. So we have to recognize our emotional states. So one of the things that I learned from Abraham Hicks is learning at the emotional scale. And we have to recognize that all emotions create energy, and we have the polarity of energy. The polarity of energy is love, which is all the positive emotional energy, and fear, which is the negative emotional energy. And the more love you have and the less fear you have, the higher up the scale you go. The more fear you have and the less love that you have in that balance of energy, in that polarity, the more negative emotional energy, the lower on the emotional scale you are. And ultimately it's down to fear, grief, despair, powerlessness, and depression. We were talking about depression over at Dear Dana's last night. Depression is the very bottom of the emotional scale. And so you're not going to go from depression, fear, and grief all the way up to joy, appreciation, and empowerment, which is absolute unconditional love. You have to work your way up the scale. And some people can skip steps as you get more skilled at it. It's a skill that you develop with practice, controlling these emotional states. But you might have to step up one step up the wrong at a time. And that's okay. It just depends on where you're at. And we need to have compassion for people that are at a lower place. Now, compassion, what a lot of people don't get is a lot of people are very much in this codependency issue. And we have a very codependent culture. And there's a lot of people teaching codependency as being compassionate. And it's not. And there's a large disconnect between people that have realized this and people who haven't, because they think their codependent behavior is being compassionate and helpful to people, and it's actually doing more harm than good. So we have to differentiate between true compassion and codependency. Compassion says, I care about what's going on for you, but I have no responsibility for you. I can care about what you're going. I feel for your suffering, but I don't feel bad myself, because one of the things I learned a long time ago is you cannot feel bad enough to help one person feel better. You cannot be sick enough to make one person well. You cannot be poor enough to help one person achieve wealth and abundance. Compassion means that we can see them where they're at and send them love without judgment. It does not mean that we do whatever they want them to do, or that we try to control what we are not going to. I see you're at this little place. I'm going to bring you up. No. I send you love. I send you compassion. I accept you where you're at in your journey, and I allow you to be where you're at for as long as you want to. This is why I do things like online. I love doing things online. I don't go around telling everybody, this is what you have to do. I'm here to say, this is my journey. If you want my help, I'm here. Because this kind of takes that codependency factor out. I'm not here to control other people's beliefs, thoughts, or feelings. I'm not here to tell you to believe in any of what I'm saying. I want you to meditate on this and feel these things out for yourself. But we are here to share our experiences with people. So as we go back to the emotional scale, if we're down here, how do we create these emotions? One of the things that I have found as I studied Tony Robbins is the 3 pillars of our creating these emotional states. The first one is our thoughts. The thoughts that we're thinking create our emotional state. Our self-talk creates our emotional state, and our body language creates our emotional state. So if we change our thoughts, our self-talk, and our body language, we completely shift how we feel at any moment. You can completely change your feelings in a moment through changing those 3 things. And by changing it, one of the things that we have to do And this is the slide I showed earlier accidentally, but we have to change our influences. See, we have things that concern us, and we have things that we can influence, and we have things that we can control. So many people, though, are focused on their concerns that they're ignoring their influence and their control. They're trying to influence and control things that are concerns, but they have no power to control those. And so what happens is they compress those things and they get smaller and smaller and smaller. But if you focus on your control, you expand. So you focus on your control. This is why I tell everybody, start focusing on yourself. It's not being selfish or ugly or mean. It's focusing on what I can control. As I focus on what I can control, which is me and what's going on inside of me, my ability to control expands. As my ability to control more expands, my influence over myself expands. My influence over other people, my influence over the collective consciousness expands when I focus on what I can control. But when I'm focused on my concerns, which is everything going on in the world that I have no ability to control, it restricts my ability to influence other people. It restricts my ability to even influence myself. This is where we get disempowered. This is where we get depressed. This is where we start getting into these negative emotional states that completely disempower us. If you are in those emotions based in fear, you are disempowered. When you are getting more in love, you are more empowered to help not only yourself but other people. So we have to focus on controlling our own states, not controlling other people, not controlling what the rest of the world believes, thinks, or feels, controlling what we think, feel individually, and then spreading that and sharing that with the rest of the world in a way that encourages people, in a way that lifts people up, that makes them want to lift up. This is how we shift consciousness. We have to start with ourselves, shift our own awareness. It's all about developing awareness, developing greater consciousness, shifting our awareness up, working on ourselves, and then allowing that to radiate out of us. This is why I create content, because as I've gone through this journey and this shift in my own consciousness over the last few years, I just feel this desire to serve. Again, I go back to the original slide. I'm getting more and more into this awareness of service. We also have to recognize that as we expand our consciousness, less and less people will understand us. One of the things that I've come to learn is I've studied some of the greats. I've studied the teachings of Buddha. I've studied the teachings of Jesus. I've studied the teachings of Lao Tzu. As we start recognizing this, and I've meditated on this for a long time, they were at higher levels of consciousness. The problem is, church consciousness and the groups that represent them are at this low level of consciousness, and they're translating the teachings of these individuals that came in at higher levels of consciousness, in the universal consciousness, unity consciousness. And as we translate the teachings of those masters from lower levels of consciousness, the ego gets involved, and that ego consciousness starts warping and distorting the teachings to be something completely different than what they were. So we have to raise our consciousness as we're studying these teachings in order to truly understand what they were here to teach. And most people don't do that because they're using those teachings to manipulate and control people rather than trying to expand consciousness, because it's coming from ego. It's coming from their own achievement. It's a form of narcissism. And we've been talking about narcissism over on Dear Dana's quite a bit. Honestly, most religious groups are based in narcissism, not teaching spiritual truth. And that's why I walked away from religious teachings and walked away from religion. And I'm not downing people that are religious. I think it can be beneficial depending on where you are at in your own consciousness. But as you raise your consciousness out of that, you get to a point where you have to go outside of what they teach in order to continue your own growth and expansion. And that's why we're here. The journey we're on is our own individual and group expansion and growth. That's why we're here. And what we're doing, we're shifting the consciousness of the planet from self-consciousness, self-awareness into that unity consciousness, where we start recognizing we are one, we are whole. And this is where we're at as a planet. We're making that shift in consciousness, but it's not easy. So the first thing we have to do is we have to work on our own individual consciousness, and then starting to allow that to flow. Start serving other people. Finding, as you do your healing, because as you raise your consciousness, you're going to find healing. I have to heal my heart chakra, and that's one of the things I'm working on every day. I'm doing shadow work, working on healing specifically my heart chakra opening, which is allowing me to communicate better. It's allowing me to have more to share. I'm also finding talents and skills as I heal, because the shadow self is not all darkness and all bad. The shadow self is simply the things you've hidden from yourself. And it could be all your repressed emotional traumas, but it can also be talents and skills that you don't even realize you have. Had I not started, when I graduated high school, I never wrote again until 2008, when I started blogging and I started getting involved in online marketing and online content. And when I did that, I unleashed a lot of talents and skills that I never knew I had, because I had an ability to communicate my ideas and thoughts with people, but I was not aware of it because I was told in school that I was no good at that stuff. So I didn't do it. That's true. Religion can bring a lot of good things. I'm not against religions as it comes off at people, but I am against the manipulative, controlling tactics that certain religions use to force people to their point of view. And a lot of it's just dehumanizing. They try to dehumanize anyone that doesn't follow their viewpoint. That's where I have a problem. When you try to dehumanize anyone that does not follow into their worldview. And some individuals within those religions don't do it, but most religions I've dealt with, they kind of dehumanize anyone that doesn't follow their perspective. And it just kind of made me sick. And then, I mean, even having to defend my very life, literally, because people wanted to kill me because I did not believe in their worldview. And I have been there. I've had to do that. And I had a lot of trauma. I've also shifted kind of some of my views about some of that recently, as I've been healing a lot of this trauma, because some of the traumas I had came from my negative association with different religious groups. And now I'm kind of a chameleon. This is the thing too about being kind of more spiritual without any religious attachment. I'm kind of a chameleon in that I can go into almost any religious group and connect with them at a level that they can understand. But at the same time, I am never a part of that group. I am there as an observer, never really a member. And that's kind of the way I've been since I was about 19 years old with almost every group. And I've had groups. I worked with a Native American group for a while. Learned a lot. One of my greatest mentors and teachers is a Native American medicine man, and I worked as his ceremonial singer for 10 years. And I worked with a Wiccan group for a while, and I worked with Buddhist groups. I worked with different groups that teach different cultural aspects over the last 30 years. But I've always kind of been like, I am learning and growing and understanding your philosophy and some of those principles I adopt into my own life, but I was never really fully ingrained in that group mentality. And I kind of broke free of that group mentality when I was about 19. By breaking that shift in consciousness almost cost me my life, because I almost committed suicide because I was stuck in that group mentality. I had so many beliefs to believe that I had to be in that group mentality, and it led me into depression. It took me a long time to recognize and fully heal that, and I'm still working on healing some of it, and that was almost 30 years ago. But for me, a lot of it was breaking free of the dogma and the forced going out and trying to force other people to that way of being. I've never bought into that. I never could buy into that. But I was told that I was evil. And then so I had all this self-doubt and beliefs. I was an evil person for changing my beliefs, for changing my own structure and my own philosophy about things. And I believed some of that for a long time. So one of the things we have to do is we shift our consciousness. We have to heal all that trauma. We have to heal and allow those things to do. And for me, a lot of it's just sitting with it and just allowing myself to feel it, allowing myself to be at one with it. And by doing that, I'm able to, again, make those shifts. As I go through the states, again, I focus on what are my thoughts. And I do this through journaling. I love journaling. In fact, I have a really cool surprise coming next week about my journaling. We'll be talking about that in some of my videos coming out this week. But I love journaling about my thoughts, writing down my self-talk, and then rewriting them to be more positive. So if I'm having negative self-thoughts about my self-worth, and I've had to do this a lot with my business because just a year and a half ago, I didn't have the confidence in myself to share these things, to talk about these things, because of some of the negative ideas that I had about myself and my own lack of self-worth. So I had to change my thoughts. I had to change the way I talk about myself, and I have to change my physiology and my body language. And Dana, we talked about this a little bit last night on your live stream. That was kind of why I thought it was an interesting discussion, because it was right up the alley of what I was planning on discussing today anyway. As we move up our emotional scale, and we also have to realize that we can be at a different level of consciousness in different aspects of our lives. So I can be in one level of consciousness in my marriage and in my relationships with my wife, in a different level of consciousness in my relationship with my career, in a different level of consciousness in my relationship with money, and a different level of consciousness in my consciousness around my personal health. So we have kind of our overall general consciousness that our body and our soul in general is at, but we have to kind of compartmentalize and look at where am I in these specific aspects of my life. Because whenever I look at it from the different aspects of my life, all of a sudden now I can see these are the specific things I need to share. These are the specific things. How am I in my relationship with my family and with my extended family? How am I in my relationship with my public image and my reputation? Where am I in relationship with other people outside of my circle of friends, outside of my close circle of friends? I have very, very, very small. I have people that I'm associated with. I have my friends, and I have my really good friends. And I can tell you, the really, really good friends, the ones that are in that really tight inner circle, I can count on one hand. In 40 years, I've got like one hand, and honestly, that's too many fingers to count them all. I don't let that many people that close in. Of course, I'm a Scorpio, so, we do that. But we have to know where we're in those relationships. We have to know where we're at in our relationship with money. If you're struggling with money, you have to look at this emotional scale and say, oh, where do you line up in money? Are you grieved, despair, powerless over money? If you are, then you probably can't manifest money very well. Do you feel guilty about having money or trying to pursue money? If so, then you could be in this powerless mode. Or in your relationships, do you feel guilty in your life relationships? Do you feel powerless in your relationships? If you're at these lowest levels, these fear-based emotions, then we have to change our thoughts, we have to change our self-talk, and we have to change our physiology about that subject in order to move up. The further up you move, the more you're able to manifest. This is one of the things I've been talking a lot about manifestation. Understanding this emotional scale is where we understand how we manifest those things in our lives. Because mostly if you're in that fear-based energy and those lower emotions, you're manifesting the lack of them, not the having of them. As you move up that emotional scale, you're going to be easier and easier and easier at manifesting the having of them and have less attachment to the lack of them. We also have to recognize everything is energy. And energy is positive and negative, and we have to have both. So many people are trying to be pure love and light with only positive energy, and it just doesn't work that way. We have to have the positive energy and the negative energy in order to have the balance and the harmony and the polarity. If you look at a magnet has a positive energy and a negative energy, and you have to have both in order for it to be magnetic. And so in order for us to be magnetic and attract to us that which we desire, we have to have the positive and the negative. So it's okay to have these negative emotional states. It's okay to go into those negative emotional states. It's just not okay to stay stuck there. We want to move out of it. We want to heal the traumas that are causing us to stay in those emotional states, but we're always going to experience in them. The more you can accept the polarity, the more you can accept the positive and the negative. The positive and the negative is the masculine and the feminine. The feminine is more of the positive. The masculine is more of the negative. As we raise our consciousness into these higher, more positive vibrations, we're going to have a more feminine energy ruling us and less of the masculine energy. One of the things that I learned as I studied the law of one is the masculine energy, the negative energy, even the negatively polarized entities that interfere with us are in that masculine energy, and that is considered what we call the pathway to wisdom. Whereas the feminine energy, the softer energies, the more and the really more powerful, but they're softer, is the energies of love and compassion. And as we bring those energies into our consciousness more and more and more, that brings us up the emotional scale. It brings our energy up at the higher vibrations of energy, but that is also the positive polarity, and that is also the energy of love, and that is the pathway of love. And so universal consciousness, when we get into these higher consciousness ideas, we start to recognize that the negative path and the positive path are both necessary. It's not one is good and the other is evil, and one must be eliminated and the other one. Good and evil is a concept of the ego. Good and bad is a concept of the ego. And it requires you to be in a negative emotional state because you have to be in judgment. When I go back to the emotional scale, one of the things I found is, if you see right here at the green section, you have contentment, and then boredom, pessimism, frustration. Everything from this line of contentment and boredom down requires judgment. The pathway to get to the higher emotions is to release judgment. Judgment of good and evil. Judgment of good and bad. Judgment of worthiness or unworthiness. We have to start breaking free of judgment to move into the higher emotional energies, because judgment is what keeps us from compassion. Judgment is what keeps us from unconditional love. Judgment is what keeps us from peace. So if we want this pathway to peace, if we want to take the pathway to finding harmony with the consciousness shift, we have to get out of judgment of ourselves first. You can't stop judging another person or another circumstance, anything outside of you, until you stop judging yourself. So we have to work on our self-judgment first. And trust me, I've spent the last 2 years working on my own self-judgment, and I have a long way to go. I'm better now than I used to be. One of my great teachers, Dr. Wayne Dyer, used to say this all the time. I'm not where I want to be, but I'm better now than I used to be. In fact, I did a whole video about it. I'll link to it right here in the cards afterwards, the live stream on the replay. But we did a whole hour-long live stream on that one statement. It's one of the most powerful mantras you can use in your life, because it helps you to recognize you're on this journey to grow. We're not going to get it all done. We're not here to be perfect, but I'm better now than I used to be. I'm less judgmental of myself now than I used to be. I'm less judgmental of other people now than I used to be. But I still have areas where I'm judgmental of people. You're going to see it. If you expect me to be perfect, if you want somebody to be perfect, go somewhere else, because you're not going to find it here. I am not perfect. I am getting better. I am higher in my own awareness. I am raising my own consciousness every single day. One of the three things, there's three things that I use for making the shift in consciousness personally. And these are my own strategies. One, meditation every day, at least 15 to 20 minutes of meditation a day. Sitting with your mind. Again, remember those three pillars that we talked about. Oh, wrong one. Which one? The state. So when we meditate, we want to sit with all three of these pillars. What are your thoughts? Allow you to think, allow your thoughts, and just sit with them and allow them to be and accept them as they are without judgment. What is your self-talk? So sit with your self-talk. What are the things that you're telling yourself? And why are you telling yourself these things? Sit with that. Allow it to be. Accept it. Love it. Embrace who you are. And your body language. Listening to your body. Am I slumped? Am I feeling down? Am I depressed? Am I joyful? Am I happy? Am I passionate and excited? Am I pulling out all of that energy? Because when we start taking control of these three parts of ourselves, and we do this through meditation, then we can connect with each of those cells. We can start listening to what's going on inside our body. We can start listening to what's going in our thoughts. We can start feeling our way through life. And then we can completely transform everything that we're experiencing. The second part is journaling. One of my great mentors, I love Tony Robbins. I've been involved in a lot of his stuff over the last 30 years. There's things he does that I do like, and there's things he does that I don't like, just about any teacher, but I generally love what he teaches. One of the biggest things he taught was, if your life is worth living, it's worth recording. And one of the biggest things that you got to do is start recording your life. I started journaling off and on years ago, and I've got several different types of journaling techniques that I do, and I'm going to be going deep into some of those techniques in my upcoming videos. So if you're new here and you haven't yet, subscribe to our channel so you can catch those videos as they come out, because I'm going to be teaching some of the specific journaling techniques that I use, and I have a very special surprise that we're going to be announcing later this week about my journaling. But we have been working hard on creating our own journals. So I journal about the Serenity Prayer. I meditate on and journal about the Serenity Prayer almost daily. What am I accepting more of today? What am I grateful for today? What courage did I face? What did I find the courage to face within myself today? And journal about that. Write those things down. One, this is going to help you to define what it is you are working on. But two, it's going to help you over time as you go back and read your journals. I can read some of my journals from 2, 3, 4 years ago, and I see the massive transformation that I've gone through in ways that I can't really see it because I've lived it. I can't really see it sometimes, but I can go back and look at those journals, and some of my content ideas come from things I wrote about in my journals. I also have daily intentions. I write down every day my daily intentions for today. In the morning, it's part of my morning ritual and routine, writing down my daily intentions for the day. But then also at night, before I go to bed, I want to write down what are my intentions for tomorrow, because this allows my subconscious mind to start coming up with ways to make those intentions a reality while I'm sleeping. And sometimes I may dream about, I might have insights in the middle of the night that help me to create those intentions for the next day. So I write down my intentions every day. Now, another thing that I do is just free writing. One, I have a meditation writing where whatever insights and ideas came up during my meditation. Some of these content ideas that I do come straight from my journals and things that came out of my meditations. A lot of what I'm talking about today came directly out of my meditations. So I write those things down. And whether you ever create content or not, like I do, you writing these things down just gives you an ability to revisit those ideas, to revisit those insights, to revisit them and explore them deeper. And then also I just have some free writing where I just allow whatever to flow through me and out of me and onto paper. And I love doing these kind of journaling exercises because it helps me to gain more clarity. It helps me to see my own progress, and it helps me to continue my own growth. And it allows, sometimes when you really get into this flow of writing and journaling, you can actually get into free writing. There's a great book by Michael Sandler called AWE, and it's Automatic Writing Experience. And he teaches this method of automatic writing where you can actually channel spirit through just sitting with a pen and paper and allowing them to write through you. It's an amazing book. I've been using it myself, and it's a great way to start learning. And you can get it on Amazon. It's AWE, Automatic Writing Experience by Michael Sandler. And if you don't know Michael Sandler, check out the Inspired Nation YouTube channel here. That's how I found him. And so that's one of the things that I'm loving these ideas of writing and sharing and creating content and just allowing things to flow to me and through me. And that's the way I create a lot of my content. I do this, some of my videos. Honestly, even like some of my 5 or 10 minute videos, I'll just turn on the record. I'll do a meditation. I'll just turn on the camera and just whatever flows. And I don't try to stop it. I don't control it. And then I'll try to edit it into a logical sequence and into something that makes sense and cut it down into clips. I might do an hour or 2 hour of this and come up with 5 or 6 videos on my channel by cutting it out into somewhat logical sequences. But that's how a lot of this content comes out. I just open myself up to this flow and I allow consciousness to work through me to bring it out. Because I am, again, it's not what's in it for me. I'm here to serve the greater consciousness. I'm here to serve the greater good. And I am trying to shift my own consciousness out of what's in it for me and more of how can I serve? And one of the best ways I can serve is just the creation. I see a lot of people that are content creators, that are YouTubers, that are other people. And I have a whole nother channel dedicated to that kind of stuff. But their focus is on what am I getting? And why are people not watching my videos? Why am I not getting subscribers? Why? And I see it even in this spiritual community. I see this a lot. But then when we're truly focused on service, for me, it's about the creation. It's not about who watches it. I don't care if one person is meant to see this video, then that one person will see this video. If 1 million people are meant to see this video, those 1 million people, that's beyond my control. Again, going back to that is outside of my control. I can learn to influence it as I grow more, but I can never control it. That's up to spirit to control. What I can control is, did I create the content? Did I do the best job I could at creating the content? Did I edit it well? Did I put it out there? Those are things I can control, and that's what my focus is on. That's where my attention goes. When it comes to the business side of things, what am I doing to get more out there so that I can reach more people? That's what I'm doing. I'm looking at the business side of things, not just as a way to make money for myself, but I have some ideas and plans of what I want to do. I want to build a retreat. I want to build a retreat where people can come and do meditation retreats, and we can do some workshops with some of these things and do some one-on-one stuff, because some of this stuff is so much easier to teach one-on-one with people than it is across these general videos. But that retreat center, I've already done a lot of work, and based on current rates and probably within the time frame it will take me to actually do it, it will be more expensive. It would cost me about $8 million to build the retreat I want to build. That requires money. So yeah, do I do this stuff as a business? Absolutely, because the things I want to do to serve even more people require a lot of money. And I will never get there just living paycheck to paycheck. I will never get there just making enough to survive. If I want to bring these things into the world, I have to bring things in that are going to create that vision, that are going to allow that vision to come into reality. But that's one of the things that Dr. Wayne Dyer used to say. If you listen to some of the interviews that he did, not just his lectures, but some of the interviews he would do with people, he gave away so much. He gave away more money than I will probably ever make in my lifetime. People don't know that. They see his wealth. They see that he had all these books and that he made all this money and he did all these things and he was able to live the life that he wanted. He gave away, literally just giving it away to whoever needed it. Most people that are living to truly serve, it's not about what they get. They do get, because once you start giving that way, you open yourself up to the flow of abundance. When you start giving from a flow of abundance, it's going to start rolling in a flow of abundance. And you will probably get it in ways that you could never comprehend. You could never have made it happen that way yourself, but it just happens. But as you shift your consciousness, that doesn't matter anymore. That's the thing. The less it matters, the more it flows to you. One of the things I found, when you can be okay, and I learned this a long time ago, and it was reiterated to me recently by Karl C, since I've been listening to some of his stuff. The more you're okay with whether you have or don't have something that you desire in your life, the more likely you are to manifest it and attract it. So many people are so attached to the lack of what they want that's why they can't manifest it, because you're too attached to the lack of it. The more you can be okay with whether it shows up or not, the more it will show up for you. And it just happens. It happens all the time. I've had things just magically show up in my life that I had no attachment to, whether they came or not, and they just showed up. It's had so much abundance just show up in my life. And it's not always been financial abundance, but it's always been, it's one of those things that I've always had everything I needed. I have never really had lack of anything. I've had a lot of fear of lack because I didn't have these little green pieces of paper that really aren't worth much, and my bank account did not say I had an abundance, so therefore I must not have an abundance, because I've been in that negative mindset. But I've come to recognize that so much abundance flows to me, not necessarily in the form of money, but in the form of just things showing up in my life that I would have spent money on, and all of a sudden I don't need money for them. Or sometimes the money does show up. I have a money show up, I get this little extra bump of money come in somewhere, and then something else comes up that was the exact amount of money I needed. So when money does show up, we don't want to blow it, because a lot of times I found in my life, hey, if this unexpected money shows up, it's showing up because it's needed somewhere that's coming up, and I just haven't gotten to the where it's needed yet. So I don't blow it, because I've done that before. Hey, all this money came in, let's go blow it. And then a few days later, something goes wrong, and I had the exact amount of money that I needed, and I didn't have it because I blew it on something stupid. Sometimes we have to take responsibility for our own stupidity. And I've done a lot of stupid. I'm not calling people stupid. I do a lot of stupid shit. I always have. Probably still will. I've learned from some of it, so there's some of it that I don't do anymore as much as I used to, but I do a lot of stupid stuff. So I'm not calling anybody else stupid for doing stupid stuff, but we have to recognize that we do stupid stuff. And when we start taking responsibility for the stuff that we do, and take responsibility for the consequences of the stupid stuff that we do, because it's not just the behavior we have to take responsibility for, it's the consequences of the behavior. When we do that, we empower ourselves to grow and expand and continue growing and become better stewards of what we have. I see a lot of people that are crying about abundance. They're in jealousy, fear, hatred, despair, disempowerment, but they are absolutely unaware of their own responsibility for their state, financially, mentally, in their relationships. I see people all the time that are like blaming the government and blaming their job and blaming everything else for the reason why they're broke. Well, they might have something to do, and I'm not going to say that there's not some disparagement in those things, and we need to bring more awareness to them. We are. There's the whole debate about minimum wage and cost of living and all that stuff. But I see people that are, making these complaints about the cost of living, and yet they're going out and partying 7 days a week. They're eating out 7 days a week. Hey, I went for a long time when we were trying to get out of debt. We went without eating for like a year and a half, without eating out. We would eat at home. You might have to make some changes in your lifestyle and take responsibility for your behavior and what you're doing with what you have. One of the things that I found, I believe in the whole concept of stewardship. I believe the money's not mine anyway. It's God's money. It's Spirit's money. I don't own it. It's on loan to me. I'm allowed to use it. If I manage what I'm given well, then more will be given to me to manage. If I'm generous with what I'm giving, if I am serving with what I'm giving, if I am, responsible with what I'm given, I will be given more to manage. But if I'm not, if somebody comes to me and says, hey, I need money so I can pay my bills, and I give them money, and then they go out and blow it on drugs, and then they come back and say, hey, I need more money, and I'll be like, well, what's the money I gave you? Well, I blew it on this over here, but I need more money because I still got to put a roof over my head. I'm sorry. I already gave you the help you needed. You blew it. You wasted it. You did not manage what I gave you well. I'm not going to give you more. And people need to look at the universe this way. The universe is treating you this way. If you're not managing well what the universe is already giving you, that's probably why the universe isn't giving you more. Take responsibility for your part to play in the life you live. Develop more awareness of what you're doing and how your behavior is affecting your circumstances. Until you do that, that's like the first step of shifting your consciousness and raising your awareness. You have to take responsibility for your behavior and the consequences of your behavior. All of it. You have to own that every single circumstance in your life is a consequence of your own behaviors. Not just your physical behaviors. It's a consequence of your mental behaviors, your thoughts, your self-talk, your emotions, your spirit, all of it. When you take responsibility for that and own that, this is where we start to shift our consciousness. We start to shift our consciousness. I shifted my consciousness around money by learning how to budget, by learning how to pay attention to where my money went. I started creating budgets. I started writing down my budgets, and I started developing more awareness of where my money was going and how much money was coming in and where it was coming in from. And by doing that, now I can create plans and strategies to do things differently so that I have more. So that I have what I need. So I have a little bit of comfort. So I have emergency savings set aside in case my daughter spends time in the hospital and I have to take off work. We have plans in place to overcome some of these challenges. Every time you get a stressful situation, you have to take responsibility, not for everything. This is not to victim shame. This is not about blaming or shaming victims. This is about taking accountability for your part to play in it. Every circumstance in your life, you had it may be a small part, it might be a big part, but you have to figure out what part did I play in this and accept responsibility for that. Now, we're not taking responsibility for other people's behavior. That's not what we're talking about. We're not saying, well, they're to blame. And it's not about blame either. Blame comes from judgment. Acceptance comes from getting out of judgment. But we can't accept responsibility from a place of judgment. This isn't about guilt, shame, or blame. Those are lower emotional energies. If you think we're victim shaming or blaming or that is low negative emotional energy. This comes from letting go of judgment. We got to accept our behavior without judgment of good or bad, without judging ourselves as being good or bad because of it, just accepting I did this. This is what happened. It's data. It's emotionless. It's neutral. I think emotionally neutral in some of these things is one of the best places to be, because when you're emotionally neutral, you're not judging it as good or bad. When we're doing this part, we need to be in a neutral zone. Contentment. When we're in contentment, we're in that neutral zone. We're not too positive. We're not too negative. We're in that neutral zone. And when we're in that place, we can make a lot of decisions, and we can see so clearly, because we can see the positives and we can see the negatives. We can see the balance and the harmony in the positive and the negative. And we can recognize the polarities. We also get really, really comfortable with the paradoxes, because as you have positive and negative energy, we also have paradoxes around that. And there's a lot of paradoxes in this world. The more at peace we are with the paradoxes, the more peace we experience in our lives, and the more we raise our consciousness. So I hope that these help. I've been here for about an hour now, and we have been talking for the last hour about ways to shift your consciousness, understanding consciousness and where we're at as a culture, and how we can shift our own individual consciousness. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a comment below. I would love to help people shifting their consciousness, and we will see you next week, where we're going to be talking more about journaling exercises and how we can write these thoughts down and shift our consciousness through writing and journaling about our life. Thank you so much for joining me today. I love you, and go with peace.